Thanks, Sophie. You're watching South East Today. Our top story tonight. The retrial of Constance Martin and Mark Gordon starts. The jury's told their baby would still be alive if it weren't for their negligence. The Hastings MP joins residents in taking on Southern Water over compensation for their supply being cut off last spring. We're in the town with the latest. Making a splash as they return to the wild, beavers are back. So what does this mean for the South East's rivers?
Before I start, I have to tell you something. It's getting a bit harder to hide, but I am pregnant. It feels weird talking about it, but I have to find the father somehow.
And comedian Harriet Kemsey overshares in style as she chats about fame, divorce, growing up in Kent and her tour coming to the South East. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Ellie Crisell. First tonight, a baby girl would still be alive today if it were not for the reckless and ultimately grossly negligent conduct of her parents, a jury has heard. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon deny manslaughter by gross negligence and causing or allowing the death of a child whose body was found in Brighton. The defendants are facing a retrial at the Old Bailey, as Piers Hopkirk reports.
The Old Bailey heard how Constance Martin and Mark Gordon had had 4 children all taken into care. And when in 2022 she became pregnant with a 5th, the birth was concealed from everyone. It was, the prosecutor said, their little secret. The jury was told when their car was found on fire on a motorway with evidence of a recent birth inside, a high-risk missing persons inquiry was launched. Today, the jury was shown CCTV footage of Mark Gordon and Constance Martin taken from the Bolton interchange before they began a lengthy journey across the country, a journey that would ultimately lead to Sussex and their eventual arrest. Prosecutor Tom Little-Casey told the court they decided that in the middle of winter and in obviously dangerous weather conditions they would deprive the baby of what it needed: warmth, shelter, protection and food, and ultimately safety. They essentially went off-grid and lived in a tent with hardly any clothes, no means of keeping and remaining warm and dry, and with scarcely any food. They put their relationship and their views of life before the life of a little baby girl. The court heard the couple camped on the South Downs, remaining off-grid even after the death of their baby. The child's decomposed body was eventually found by police a few days after the defendants were detained in Brighton in February 2023. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon deny manslaughter by gross negligence and causing or allowing the death of a child. The case continues.
Well, Piers joins me now. Piers, what else has the jury been told this afternoon?
Well, the prosecution has been describing the moments leading up to and including the arrest of Constance Martin and Mark Gordon. Now, they were said to have been moving around the Greater Brighton area, living rough. They were scavenging food from bins. They'd been spotted a number of times by members of the public. When they were eventually arrested by police, they were described as dishevelled and ravenous. Initially, they refused to answer questions about the whereabouts of their baby daughter, but when a few days later the baby was found dead, wrapped in a plastic bag and left in a shed, Constance Martin said in police interview the baby died after she fell asleep with her tucked under her coat. The trial continues tomorrow.
Piers, thank you. Kent police are appealing for witnesses after a fatal collision on the M2 yesterday afternoon. It happened coastbound between junctions 3 and 4 and involved a white motorbike and purple McLaren car. The motorbike rider, a man in his 30s, was declared dead at the scene. The car didn't stop but was later found and the driver was arrested in connection with the incident. There's a row over compensation in Hastings after the town's water supply was cut off last May due to a burst water main. Residents and businesses are concerned that Southern Water have miscalculated payments and say they don't know when they'll be compensated. Southern Water says all customers will be told what they'll receive by mid-March. But the local MP has now weighed in on the issue, as Leanne Rinney reports.
Last year, Victor Granville was forced to shut his pub for 3 days on what would have been his busiest weekend. he had no water supply, which meant no customers, and nearly a year on, still no compensation.
We'd probably lost between £2,500 and £3,000 because there was the three busiest days, and yeah, I believe that, you know, as we'd already had staff rostered and things and expenses, we never generated any business to cover that, and I believe they should pay.
Last year, more than 30,000 homes in Hastings had no water over the early May bank holiday after a mains pipe burst. Some people were cut off for 6 days. Last month, Southern Water agreed to pay compensation to customers affected after previously saying people weren't eligible. But many residents who've now received compensation say it's been undercalculated, while many other people are still waiting.
Having been promised a reasonable amount of money in terms of compensation, £50 for every 12 hours that the water was out, people are now receiving payments, and those payments are not coming up to the expectations.
Southern Water say by mid-March all customers will be told how much compensation they'll be paid, in addition to a £1 million goodwill fund that's been set up to help those affected.
There are sometimes issues where the monitors from Southern Water might say that there was a supply, but actually the pressure was so low it wasn't a usable supply. Southern Water have given me a commitment that they will honour the commitment to compensation in those instances.
But for many businesses and residents, the worry about if and when they will be compensated continues. Leanne Rinney, BBC South East Today, Hastings.
Well, Oliver Whitfield-Mearchich is in Hastings for us this evening. Hi, Oliver. Now, Hastings residents have had no end of problems with water, haven't they? There's been flooding, they've had the supply cut off. They're obviously very concerned about Southern Water.
Yes, and the local area MP says that she's going to ensure that Southern Water keeps to its promises and pays out on that compensation. Now, around 460 businesses have had no money sent back to them whatsoever, despite that deadline looming within the next couple of days for all customers to find out how much their water billing accounts are going to be topped up by. Southern Water says as soon as it became aware of this incident back in May 2024, it worked round the clock to try to resolve things. The advice now is for everybody to double check the times and dates that Southern Water is paying out that compensation on by going through your phone messages, just to ensure that you're getting the money that you're owed.
Oliver, thank you. The Vice-Chancellor of the University of Sussex has called on the government to reverse a ban on international students bringing family members to live with them in the UK. Professor Sasha Rose-Neal says current visa rules have led to a drop of around a quarter in the number of people from overseas studying at the university this academic year. On average, overseas students pay up to £20,000 a year. Students from the UK generally pay £9,250 tuition each year, and one university has estimated a loss of £30 million. More from our Sussex political reporter Lucinda Adam.
There's so much to attract international students to come and study in the South East, but the experience comes at a cost.
Actually, I worked it out. I would like to say 70,000 pounds. £1 is 200 Jamaican dollars. So every time I feel like I really don't want to go to a lecture, I just look up the conversion rates, and that's the best motivation to get me out of the house.
I'm in Turkey. Now the economy is really bad in Turkey, if I have to be honest. And also the education system is really better here, actually.
It seems like the student applications from abroad are dropping. Do you have any thoughts on why you think that's happening?
I feel that it might be dropping because of the cost, paying not only for the course but for the health insurance, for the accommodation, for the food. It's a struggle at times, obviously.
Last academic year, the University of Sussex welcomed nearly 6,000 international students, and they made up almost 30% of the student body. But in this academic year, international intake has dropped by 27%. And that means the university's income has been reduced by an estimated £30 million.
There's a risk to the whole of UK higher education if our international student numbers continue to decline. Home undergraduate fees haven't kept pace with the cost of teaching home students, and it's international students who have basically been subsidising home students. There already are universities closing courses and reducing the choice available to UK students.
Having already axed 6 courses and almost 60 staff, the University of Kent is pulling out all the stops to attract more overseas students. Last year, it launched this dedicated international college. It offers foundation courses to prepare people for life at universities here.
International students around the world have got lots of opportunities nowadays to study in various regions and different places within the UK even. And so having this new opportunity with UKIC helps us to make sure our messaging is correct and suitable to help guide and counsel those students overseas so that we can tell them about the great opportunities we have here to help them develop their skills and prepare for future employability.
But changes to visa rules last year no longer allow a student's dependents to live with them here in the UK, and they can't work for more than 20 hours a week to help manage their bills. Some campaigners want those policies to change.
I think it's really important that students are seen differently to other migrants because A, that's how the public actually sees them. B, most international students go home again after their studies, so they're not permanent migrants. I sometimes say, look, they come here, spend lots of money, make our universities more diverse, and then go home again, normally with warm views of our country. What is not to like about that?
The government says it's taking swift action to focus on the financial futures of our universities, and it's looking at wider reform to help keep their world-leading status. The international students here want people to know that they're working hard and paying their way.
I think there's a misconception that we come to leech off the UK, or we've come to overstay our visa and wreak havoc on the system. That's not what we are. Like we're people trying to make better lives for us, for our families and even our countries.
Lucinda Adam, BBC South East Today at the University of Sussex in Falmer.
And tomorrow, our series on immigration continues with an exclusive report on the work to reduce the number of Albanian migrants arriving in the UK. There's also coverage online and on your local BBC radio station. It is exactly 7:15. A reminder of our top story tonight. A baby girl would still be alive today if it were not for the reckless and ultimately grossly negligent conduct of her parents, a jury has heard. Constance Martin and Mark Gordon's daughter was found in Brighton. They deny manslaughter by gross negligence at their retrial at the Old Bailey. Also in tonight's programme. Vital wins for Brighton and Gillingham this weekend. We'll have a full roundup of the sport.
And after a weekend where we saw temperatures reaching 18 degrees this week, it is going to be much colder. For most of us, dry and bright though. I've got the details coming up later in the programme.
For the first time in 400 years, beavers are being released into the wild. For decades, the South East has led the way in beaver conservation, keeping the animals on reserves to monitor them and see how they could operate in the wild. So what has our pioneering work uncovered, and how will the return of beavers transform our rivers? Hannah Rowe has spent 2 nights finding out.
2 reserves, 2 counties, and just one question. What will it mean when these little fellows are released into the wild in our region? We're starting out in Sussex. Here at the Net Rewilding Project, they keep beavers in a very secure enclosure.
This is what tens of thousands of pounds worth of fencing looks like. So in order to have a enclosed release, which is up until now all we've been allowed to have in England, this is the kind of infrastructure you need in place.
Deeper into the enclosure, the evidence of beavers becomes more apparent. But it's what they've done to the water here that's really remarkable.
This and most of the land around it would have been either arable land or pasture for dairy cattle. So we would have been, a few years ago, stood in a patch of grassland. And what the beavers have done, they've built 3 dams in here, and suddenly you've got a great big pond in front of us.
Seeing beavers is no mean feat. They only come out after dark. But this little kit was just too eager to get started on his dam building, and we got very lucky. It's hoped this little chap could be released onto the River Ada, but not everyone is best pleased.
A beaver in the right place is a good thing. A beaver in the wrong place can be a really bad thing. They're industrious animals. They will fell trees, they will undermine riverbanks, they will pierce flood defences. They can do a lot of damage.
But just over the border in Kent is the largest and oldest population of beavers in the whole of England. If there is an answer that keeps everyone happy, perhaps it can be found here.
This is Ham Fen, which is the first site in England to have beavers return to it under a licence scheme 20 years ago. And the purpose here was actually habitat restoration, this role they have as ecosystem engineers.
Paul takes me further into the reserve. It's a tad boggy.
Oh, right.
But after half a mile and 4 hours of waiting, we reach the final dam.
We've been through 3 dams to get to where we are now, and you can see the water quality, the clarity of the water is so much better.
Yeah, you can see all the way to the bottom.
Yeah, they act as these giant filters. The site has seen kingfisher return, we've got water voles here, turtle doves, another national rarity. We set up an East Kent Beaver Advisory Group here 5 years ago, and that was with anglers, farmers, the Internal Drainage Board, and it's fostered a real sense of trust in people, and that's a really important thing. If we're going to be doing other reintroductions in the future, we need to have those kind of groups in which to have those conversations.
If Kent's example is followed, perhaps beavers and people can work together, and sites like this could be more common and more enjoyable for everyone. Hannah Rowe, BBC South East Today.
How wonderful. Now, time for a look at the sport. James is with me. It's been such a busy weekend.
Busy and good for some of our teams at least. That's 4 straight wins in the top flight. The first time since 1981 as Brighton beat Fulham, and now they're just 3 points away from the Champions League spots behind Chelsea and Manchester City. They went behind in the first half thanks to this from Raul Jimenez, but just all up for Brazil.
Yeah, the game was hard, tough to play against them. They have a good team. But in the end, you had a chance to win.
Really, really happy, and I think that was a great header, so yeah, nice one. Hopefully more to come now.
Crawley secured a point against Reading in their battle to stay in League One. The visitors went ahead in the first half at the Broadfield Stadium. The next goal didn't come until the 90th minute when Panush Kamara scored a dramatic equaliser that rescued a point for the Reds. They're still in the relegation zone just this season. It may well go right down to the wire. In League Two, Gillingham got a very welcome win against second-place Bradford. They soaked up the pressure in the first half, but Conor Masterson found some space in a crowded box and they held on to the lead for 3 vital points. That takes them 12 clear of the relegation places. In skeleton, Crowborough's Matt Weston has picked up 2 medals at the World Championship over the weekend. On Friday, he became the first British athlete ever to win 2 World Championship golds, and yesterday he took a silver in the team event with Tabby Sturka. There will be no World Championships next year, with the Winter Olympics at the end of the season instead. Tennis now, and Brighton's Sonny Cartel plays in the final 32 at Indian Wells tonight after the biggest win of her career. Yesterday, she beat the Brazilian 16th seed Beatriz Haddad Maia, the first time she's ever beaten a top 20 player. And Cartel was only there after getting a lucky loser spot. Beaten in qualifying, but given Sloane Stevens' place when she withdrew due to injury. Tonight, she plays Russian Polina Kudermetova. Harlem Eubank maintained his unbeaten record with a win at the Brighton Centre on Friday, winning the vacant IBF Intercontinental welterweight title. He beat tough Northern Irish fighter Tyrone McKenna, the referee stopping the fight in the 10th round. Afterwards, he called out Conor Benn, who his cousin Chris Eubank Jr. fights next month. He says he wants a world title shot. When he spoke to me after the fight, I asked him what his uncle Chris Eubank, a former world champion of course, said to him in the ring.
He was happy, you know. I can't give away his nuggets of wisdom. That would be foolish to give away everything he's saying to me. But yeah, no, he was happy tonight, so I'm very pleased and looking forward to marching on. It's just about proving it to the people and, you know, proving it to myself. And, you know, I know that I can operate at world level. And with every fight, you're gonna, you know, if you don't already believe that, you're going to start to believe it.
Yeah, it was a very busy weekend of sport, and more football tomorrow with Crawley hosting Charlton. We're definitely getting to the business end of the season, Ellie.
A lot to celebrate there, wasn't there? A lot of wins. Brilliant. Thank you very much, James. Now, a lot has also happened to the comedian Harriet Kemsley in the past few years. Her appearances on TV, on Live at the Apollo, Would I Lie to You, are turning her into a household name. And she's also got married and divorced and had a child. We're happy to share this information on her behalf because she happily does in her new comedy tour, Everything Always Works Out for Me, which is coming to Maidstone on Saturday and Farnham next week. Here she is.
To be here. My name is Harriet. Before I start, I have to tell you something. It's getting a bit harder to hide, but I am pregnant. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It feels weird talking about it, but I have to find the father somehow. So I'm just going gig to gig around the country, you know.
Your name?
Harriet Kemsley.
Your occupation?
Comedian.
Your chosen charity?
Choose love.
And your specialist subject?
Sloths. Bobby, this could quickly escalate into road rage.
You think I'm gonna murder you at a road rage, and you think the best way for me to not do that is for you to keep talking?
Road rage is a silent killer.
Well, Harriet joins me now. It's so nice to see you.
It's so nice to see you.
You're all around me.
I know, we're surrounded. You can't escape.
What do you think?
I mean, you can definitely tell I'm pregnant in some of these pictures, I think. Yeah.
Now, you're about to embark on this tour.
Yeah.
It's called Everything Always Works Out for Me.
Yeah.
Is that said through gritted teeth sometimes?
Yeah, absolutely said from trapped in a hole, basically. Yeah, it's a story of how everything kind of fell apart the last couple of years. I got a divorce, and me and my friends just kept saying everything always works out for me and trying to be really positive as everything just fell apart.
But in terms of work stuff, that does seem to be working out, doesn't it?
Yeah, fingers crossed. That's going good. Yeah.
You were telling me before we started recording that you work all the time. You're always doing gigs and you do TV stuff. You've got your podcast. Did you ever think you'd make it as a comedian to this level? I mean, this is proper.
Yeah, I think it's kind
impressive.
of taken me by surprise. I thought I wanted to be like a serious actor, but then every time I did it, people laughed. And then my parents were watching Live at the Apollo one night, and they suggested that I went out and I did it. And I've never met another comedian whose parents have suggested it. Like, everyone else has such higher expectations for their children, and mine were like, no, not a doctor. Comedy's the only option. I think there's nothing else for her to do. So yeah, I'm kind of astounded by it, but I love it. So yeah, I feel really lucky.
So tell me about the tour. What's the show all about? Can you talk a bit about the content?
Yeah, so it's called Everything Always Works Out for Me, and it's about a breakup, trying to start dating again, kind of in your 30s. You're a completely different person. It's a whole new world out there. Like, I'm not who I was, like, in my 20s. Like, I'm now single in my mid-30s. I'm like single for the first time in my life with self-esteem. It's like crazy. Like, I'm not who I was. And it talks about, yeah, just everything kind of falling apart and just trying to stay positive through it.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of good responses from the audience because you're really selling your soul effectively, aren't you? You're bearing it all. Is that hard?
I can't help but just talk about personal things. I think it's good because I think it does help to process it, and when people laugh, it's a real connection that you're not alone with something. And so that's a really lovely thing.
There's a lot for people to relate to, of course, in your story. And just going back a bit further, you grew up here, didn't you? You're a local girl.
Yeah.
So tell us about where you're from.
So I was born in Maidstone Hospital, and then was in Sittingbourne for a little bit, and then but mainly grew up in Canterbury.
Yeah. And do you still get back there a lot?
Yeah, I do. I've actually just dropped my daughter with my dad, so he's on granddad duties while I do this. So yeah, I do go back quite a lot. Yeah.
So when you come back to perform here, what's that like? Do your old mates come and watch you?
Yeah, I did the Marlow last year, and that was so fun. There was loads of friends there, and it's actually amazing. There's so many comics from Kent, like Angela Barnes and Lou Sanders and Chloe Petts. It's like there's like a real gang of us. It's really nice.
Well, it's lovely to have you here on the sofa. Very best of luck with your tour, Harriet. Thank you. Now, is everything going to work out with the weather? Nina is here. Spoiler alert, no. What's happening?
I know, a huge change. We had 18 degrees yesterday, 17 degrees today, and tomorrow it's just going to be around about 9 degrees at best. So a big change coming in the weather. We did have slightly more cloud around through the day today, still some signs of blue skies out there, and we will keep some mostly dry weather with a little bit of brightness despite it turning significantly colder tomorrow, and then the chance of some nighttime frosts throughout much of this week. So the cold air is certainly taking hold. A northerly wind will arrive through the day tomorrow. Once that cold air sets in, it is pretty well established and potentially lasting right the way into the weekend. Cloudy skies though through the night tonight, a bit of patchy light rain is possible. Temperatures first thing tomorrow morning sitting at lows of 4 degrees. It is grey and overcast first thing through the day tomorrow. A lot of cloud, but then as we head through the morning, the cloud will tend to move to the south and brighter skies will develop through the afternoon. The winds are coming down from the northeast. Those temperatures I've already mentioned, around about 8 to 9 degrees. And then with some clearing skies as we go through Tuesday evening, we may just pick up 1 or 2 showers for a time. But by the time we start Wednesday morning, much colder, a frosty start to the day. Temperatures back down below freezing for most of us at around about -1 degrees. Through the day on Wednesday, we'll see some occasional bright spells, but there will be 1 or 2 showers. The cloud tends to increase as we head through the day. The showers are fairly light and well scattered. The wind's not quite as strong, but temperatures still at around 7 to 8 degrees, and showers possibly through the day on Thursday, but pressure is relatively high, which is why it's going to be quite a quiet week of weather despite those temperatures really taking quite a tumble through the day tomorrow. Ellie.
Oh, just when we thought we were out of the woods. Thank you very much, Nina. That is it from all of us here for the moment. Claudia Sabasis though will be back with your late news at 10:30. Bye bye for now.